Hello, today I'm doing a video on a 2012 Kia Sedona minivan, 3.5 liters. I had an engine oil leak, um, so I ended up taking, and underneath your intakes there is a little sensor way down underneath here. That was not it on this one. This sensor was dry, but since I had to go down this far to replace what needed to be replaced, I had to replace this sensor as well. As you go over, the problem and the culprit was this right here, the oil filter housing. The oil filter housing was leaking, and it was dripping and filling this whole area up in here. And it was dripping down the side of the transmission and onto the ground. I could not find the leak anywhere. It ended up being that filter housing O-rings were all collapsed. Now, to change this, it says 3 hours. It ended up being more like 6. It's going to be like 6. Okay. What I had to do is I had to remove the upper intake. I had to remove the lower intake. I just set it aside. The lower intake, you can leave the fuel injection in. You just slide it off. You unbolt it. There's some hex heads in here. There's a couple nuts on the ends, and they pop off. Probably the worst part that I have to do is you have to get rid of this. See if I can get some better light on here for you. There's coolant for your thermostat and such, and you got to remove that. And you have to remove a lot of wiring. And you have to drain the coolant, and you have to drain the engine oil if you have to change the filter housing. So once you get that all drained out, you can, remove the upper, lower intake and get that far. There's a lot of videos on that, so I'm not going to cover it. But to take this housing off, you can see there's 1, 2, and then there's a bolt that goes onto the back side. But you have to come in through this way, and you have to take off some bracketry in here. It's kind of a pain. All right, and it's the same thing in the back, which is really hard to see. But because there's the front, and you come back, here's the oil filter housing. Then in the back side down here, there'll be 2 nuts and also a bolt. 3 holes. And you'll have to get those off, and I believe they are 12 millimeters. And you have to use a long extension to come in. And it is kind of pain, but you can get it done. And that is where my oil leak originated from, was the filter housing. Everybody said it was the sensor over here. It was dry as a bone. And when you take that thermostat housing cover off, that gasket's going to stick to the block. You're going to want to take it and scrape it off of the block. Down here where there's passages, the rubber was stuck on mine all the way around there. So you may have to make sure you take it off. And at this point, if you could get new gaskets or O-rings or whatever for your thermostat housing, it would be the time to change them. So now we'll put it back together and fire it up and see what happens.